now who was a pupil at the school when this incident occurred. So he's going to come across and have a little chat with you now about what went on.
That's it.
I'm not used to the stage. Morning.
No.
Right. Some of you who followed this case over the last 40 years might realise and identify me from having given numerous interviews over the years. Despite these interviews, I've never actually done any public speaking on the subject, so I hope you'll bear with me. And if I start boring you, just start throwing things. And I resent the implication that I've grown up. Right, 4th of February 1977. Anybody who was in the area yesterday will appreciate the weather that we had on that particular day. It was abysmal. Never being one who's been a great lover of being cold and wet, I wasn't out that day with the rest of the children while they were playing football. I much preferred to stay in the classroom, reading, doing my own work. Not at that point, no. Throughout the day, the children would be coming in from the playground during break times and reporting that they'd seen something strange in the playing field surrounding the school. I've always been a natural-born skeptic. I don't do belief systems, I don't believe in things. I either know or I don't know, simple as that. And one thing that I was pretty sure of at the time was that flying saucers didn't exist. I had a long fascination with science fiction, however, the sort of science fiction that deals with humanity's place in the future, etc. Nothing to do with spaceships coming from Mars and invading, nothing at all like that. So, being the natural-born skeptic that I was, at the end of the day, I decided that I was going to debunk this once and for all. Total nonsense. So at the end of the day, when the final bell went, I walked to the top of the playing field, which you'll see when you go over there later. And there was absolutely nothing in sight. It was drizzling like mad, wind, horrible. But despite this, and despite the fact that it was a bit of a quagmire, I thought I wasn't going to get this debunked properly unless I actually got to the location where the children had said they'd seen something. So, despite it being a little bit against the school rules, I thought I'd make my way over the fence at the perimeter of the school and cross a small stream. Well, I'd only managed to get my leg over when I was suddenly drawn to a large object which had appeared from behind a group of trees which are still there. About 45 feet long, silver, an expression I didn't use at the time because it wasn't in my vocabulary, but the silver finish had a pearlescent sort of feel to it. It was almost difficult to focus on, but a sort of mother of pearl effect. It had a central dome that covered the top third, the middle third of the vehicle, and a red, I described it at the time as a flashing light. Now, again, another word that wasn't in my vocabulary at the same time, and I'll correct that now. I would say it was pulsating more than flashing. Rather than a flash like you'd see on an emergency vehicle, it was more sort of a very slow, perhaps one flash per second pulsation. I honestly couldn't believe what I saw, and the sighting only lasted for the matter of about 10 seconds at the very most. And the object, virtually motionless, but it appeared to be giving a slight tugging motion away from the trees, and then went behind the trees again. Now, for some reason, my natural curiosity, let me point out at this time, there was no fear at all in this sighting. It was pure amazement at this thing that was in front of me. But one thing I've never been able to explain since, and to me it's more important than the actual sighting itself. I mean, 5 to 10 seconds of a sighting, it's memorable, but there was also a psychological aspect as well, because I found myself running away from where I'd seen it. As I said, there's no fear at all, and to this day I can't explain why I felt the urge to run away. But the speed at which I moved, it was almost as if my life depended on it, and I keep thinking about this time and time again over the last 40 years. And the only thing I can think of is that some sort of suggestion was put there that I had to get away. Anyway, I got in the taxi that we had to take us home from school, and got home. My mother realised I was very agitated. I think she described it more as frightened, but it wasn't frightened. It was literally agitated with what I'd seen, and the fact that I'd had my world turned up on end, because to me these things didn't exist. You heard Randall Jones-Pugh being mentioned in the talk. Randall Jones-Pugh had recently retired as the local vet for the area, and living on a farm. We knew him very well, or at least my mother did, so she got in touch with him knowing of the interest that he had in UFOs. So Randall appeared quite quickly, and later on that night we came back down to the school, probably about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. But by that time it was totally impossible to get to where we'd seen it. It was a quagmire, and the light had gone completely. So we came down the following morning with a reporter from the Western Telegraph called Hugh Turnbull, and managed to get to the spot where the object had appeared. There was no evidence that any other vehicle had been involved. Like I said, the area was an absolute quagmire, and subsequent investigations with Welsh Water, who own a sewage treatment works just further up the hill, and the local farmers revealed that no vehicles of any type had been in that area on the day, or for any time previous to that day. So a little bit of further investigation revealed that near the site, the only physical evidence which could be taken that there was something to what we had seen was that a recently erected and repaired telegraph pole, the cross section, which had been put up only a few days earlier, had been knocked to an angle like that. From then, it just went crazy. The school erupted into a media circus, the likes of which Pembrokeshire has probably never seen. It's certainly, our headmaster had certainly never seen anything like it, because he got to the point in the end where he left the phone off the hook and decided to put an end to this once and for all. But in that time, we'd attracted media attention from all around the world. There were even rumours of going over to the States to film a documentary, which of course never transpired. Now, 40 years on, over the last 40 years, I've always been referred to as the boy that saw the spaceship. I have never at any time in the last 40 years, not then, not now, ever claimed that I saw a spaceship. I saw a UFO. It was a flying object, it was unidentified. That's simple as that. If there is a terrestrial explanation for this UFO, I'm quite willing to accept that. But after 40 years of research and thousands of pounds spent on literature, various other work, I am still none the wiser to what we saw. I could go into the little details of how the theories of how these craft are powered, how they fly, but with regards to the origin of these craft, Nobody knows. And so I don't want to sensationalise things at all, and I never have sensationalised. You've probably seen the reports that the children made at the time. Now, there's been a few comments that the pictures weren't all identical and all, but you have to accept as well that children are notoriously unreliable witnesses. If a small child were to witness a crime, a simple robbery, by the time the police get to interview them afterwards, you'll have the robbers in striped jumpers wearing masks and carrying guns. So there was certainly, possibly, combined with poor artistic talent, there was also certainly an element of understandable juvenile elaboration with some of the accounts. I'll leave it to you lot to work out for yourselves where you think that might have occurred. But what you have to remember is, don't look at the differences between the pictures, look at the similarities. Given the fact that 14 children were all put into exam situations with no chance of collaborating on a story or on a description whatsoever, we'd had the weekend since the sighting before the Monday when we made these pictures and descriptions. But this was a time when there was no Skype, there was no Facebook, mobile phones hadn't come along, and if you wanted to use the house phone, then you had to have a damn good reason for your parents, and even then they were earwigging on what you were saying to your friends. So, after we did the pictures and the descriptions, the headmaster of the school, Ralph Llewellyn, a lovely, very, very straight, no-nonsense man. I suppose if you were to picture a Victorian teacher or a Victorian headmaster, Ralph Llewellyn would fit the bill perfectly. Quite strict, but fantastic, warm sense of humour as well. Now, he had been sceptical all along, but the moment that he saw the pictures and read the descriptions, his attitude changed. He never accepted that what we saw was a UFO, because he didn't want to. But he did accept that the children had seen something out of the ordinary that they couldn't explain. The other thing you've also got to accept is that a lot of suggestions have been made, as I said, about tankers, Welsh water tankers, agricultural equipment. Most of the children who attended school in Broadhaven came from agricultural backgrounds, myself included. Any piece of agricultural equipment, silage equipment, tankers, we'd have recognised like a shot. There was no possibility that it could have been anything like that at all. Also the fact that sewerage tankers don't tend to hover 50 feet off the ground. The other suggestion was that it might possibly have been a helicopter, or I think I've heard a Harrier jump jet mentioned in recent days as well. Well, besides the noise that a helicopter and a Harrier jump jet obviously makes when taking off and landing, we had Broadie on the doorstep, and the school had a very good relationship with Broadie itself. In fact, I think 2 sets of encyclopedias that we had in the school, the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was donated by RAF Broadie, and we also had a full set of Encyclopedia Americana, which was donated from the US Naval Facility. So we had a close relationship with the base. And all the children, we were so familiar with practically every NATO aircraft in the sky. We were so used to Vulcan bombers flying overhead, Lightnings, every type of military hardware that you could imagine, and we could name it immediately. Peter Paget, who wrote The Welsh Triangle, actually states in his book that he arrived with a little bit of scepticism in his mind on whether we had identified it properly. However, when he arrived, he had a very, very nice sports car. Not a common one, and the fact that we identified it immediately as a Lotus Europa immediately made him think these kids know what they see. community have been very supportive. I will say that. There's a lot of scepticism in the area, and there possibly still is. And it's not helped in recent times by the amount of nonsense that's on the internet about the UFO subject. So, and the moment people think of the word UFO, instantly they think alien, which isn't what it was about. It could have been an alien, I don't know, and I honestly can't give you any further information to this day on that subject. Now, I'm going to start waffling now because I've actually reached pretty much the point of what I wanted to explain. So if Emlyn or anybody else would like to, anything you'd like me to add that I might have missed?
Yeah, we'll have there will be a big Q&A session later on.
Right here.
But anybody's any questions now?
Well, I tell you what, I'll leave it till the Q&A session, but that's my account as far as I can tell you. And like I said, I'm not used to even public speaking, so you don't mind if I start cracking up now. So I'd like to pass the mic back, and hopefully, if you have got any questions that I haven't covered, then I'll be quite happy to answer them later on.
Thank you, Dave.